Hello and welcome to this episode of That's Interesting. I'm your host, Frank Hart. This show explores things that I find interesting. I hope that you find them interesting too. Today our guest is Kelly Brotzman, the Executive Director of the Prison Book Program. It's here in Quincy. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very happy to have you here.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to talk about, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? How did you end up in this position?
Yeah. So Prison Book Program is actually a year older than me. It was born in 1972. So it's been around a long time, and this program was run 100% by volunteers for 48 years. There were no paid staff. It was basically groups of people who got together, opened up the space, collected books, and would send books upon request to any incarcerated person in the United States. I came into the picture in 2021. I spent 20 years in higher education. I was a college professor. I have a PhD in social ethics, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm sort of obsessed by social justice. And social injustice specifically. So I did a lot of teaching and a lot of directing of offices and programs in colleges and universities. One of the experiences that I had during that time was I taught some what are called inside out courses, which are college classes that are taught inside a prison with half of the students being incarcerated people at that prison and half of the students being ordinary non-incarcerated college students. And those experiences exposed me to the prison system in a way I'd never, I was totally naive. I'd never known anyone who'd been to prison or jail or, not even anyone who'd been arrested or anything like that. So, to actually see the inside of an American prison in this era of mass incarceration to me was just incredibly eye-opening and really also very disturbing in my experience. So when it came time for a job change, 3.5 years ago, I was fortunate to just sort of be around and be ready when Prison Book Program made the decision to switch to hiring paid staff to, kind of lead the operations of the organization, although we are still very much volunteer powered. So the thread that runs through, my prior career and this one is a passion for helping regular people in society know and understand incarcerated people, who are some of the most invisible and misunderstood people, I think, in our society. They are, in fact, invisible to most people, and are very, very separated from sort of everyday life. And in my experience, some of the most interesting and I guess I would just say touching experiences that I've had are getting to know incarcerated people and just how much they are like you and I. You and I and regular people in our community. And so I think there's a passion that I have for just humanizing, understanding the human quality of every single person, including incarcerated people. And that's one thing our program does. It allows regular people to come and volunteer and read handwritten letters from people in prison, hear what their lives are like, what kinds of things they can do, they can't do, the kinds of experiences that they have both prior to prison and in prison. And so in that way it sort of opens the door that is mostly closed to most people. So it really, I think, connects people on both sides of the prison walls, which is something that I really have a passion for, and that's what kind of keeps me going.
Good. That's good. Volunteers. You have a lot of volunteers. But how many volunteers do you have? What do they do?
We just ran our data, actually, on this. For 2024, we had over 1,470 unique individuals who came to volunteer with us. Good. And about 10% of those people come every month. It's just part of their routine. So they come we call them our regulars. They come 3 or more times in a 3-month period. So we're very fortunate in that regard. I think a lot of organizations and nonprofits that rely on volunteers would love it if they had more volunteers who were like the regulars, who kind of knew the drill. We do have a lot of people who come to visit us once within a year. Sometimes they come with a group. Sometimes they just come on their own. But the work of our organization is still very much done by volunteers. There's only 2 of us on staff, myself and one other person. Okay. So, and we responded to over 20,000 book requests last year with over 70,000 books. So it's not me and my colleague who are doing all of that. We hold 200 volunteer sessions a year, and it's 35 volunteers per session. And what those people do is fulfill book requests. They read requests from people in prison. They select books from our inventory, which is about 15,000 books on any given day. We have the books organized very much like you would see in a small bookstore, by category. We've got mysteries here, history, culture, language learning, trade skills. They're all sort of organized by category. And it's the volunteers who read each request, go through, pick out books for each person, wrap them up for the mail, and get them out the door. So, and without volunteers, we would be lost. So they really do all of the concrete tasks of our fulfillment process. Yep. My colleague and I are there basically to make it possible for them to do what they do. And we really pride ourselves on trying to provide people with specifically what they're asking for. Because our inventory is largely donated, although we do acquire some targeted titles that are very popular and that would never come in sufficient quantity via donation, like dictionaries. Okay. Nobody buys a dictionary anymore because you have a supercomputer in your pocket, and so you don't need a dictionary. But dictionaries are the #1 request. They always have been for 53 years. The #1 request has been for a college-level dictionary. So we do buy those by the palletful at a significant discount. But there's a very small sort of portion of books that we buy. So what we do is, people will try to tell us, hey, I'm trying to learn Italian. Or they'll say, hey, I'm trying to learn how to code in CSS. Or, we can almost always meet those requests with what we have in our inventory, which is amazing. And so every time we have a volunteer session going, which again is usually 4 times a week over across the street, we have people bringing in books. Most of the books on our shelves have just sort of walked in the door. We have teams of volunteers who know how to sort the books and know how to choose the ones that, yes, we can use those books. Okay. We can probably send those books. And they know which ones we probably need to send elsewhere. Some of the books that come in that we can't use, we can maybe get some store credit somewhere for them and trade them for books that we can use. And we have relationships with lots of other book-oriented charities too, like More Than Words and other charities. So we share books between ourselves. And so that's the other aspect of what volunteers do, is they help us go through all the donated books and get them on the shelves and get them out. There's just, we probably go through 100,000 books a year. I mean, well over that, probably a couple 100,000 books a year, go through the sorting process. And like I say, some stay and go on the shelves, and some go other places. But there's a green impact to that as well. Books and the landfill do not go well together. Yep. Books don't decompose well at all. They decompose very slowly. And so keeping all those books out of the landfill is another aspect of what we do. It's not one we talk about so much, but
something you wouldn't think about either.
Yeah, it's something people don't think about. When you're trying to get rid of a book, it's like, do I throw this away? Do I give it to someone else? Do I take it to Savers? Do I take it to a charity shop? But one of the best things you can do is bring it to us, because then more and more people will get to read that book. We estimate that every book we send gets read by 8 to 10 people.
Well, once it's delivered?
Once it's delivered, yeah. People share. They love to share their books with each other. They love to talk about them. They use it as a way to get to know each other, help each other. So people tell them that they form their own little circulating library on their pod or on their tier or whatever. And when everyone they know has had a chance, they will deposit it in the institution's library. With books they may want to keep for when they get out, they do have the opportunity, they have the option most places to mail it home if they can come up with the postage money. So a lot of people write to us for books about jobs they might want to get when they return to society, skills that would help them. And so with books like that, rather than sort of, again, donating them to the institution's library, they're more likely to sort of send them home, send them to a safe address, someone who can take care of them until they get back.
Okay. Yeah, so how do they make these requests? Is it the inmates make the request? Is it family that makes the request?
It's both. We have, and it's a great question, because for 49 years, it was you write us a letter.
Okay.
You're incarcerated, you write us a letter. 99% of them still, actually no, about 90% of them are now still a handwritten letter request from the incarcerated person saying, hey, I really want to learn about this, I really want to study this, I love fantasy, and we try to send everyone a 3-pound package of books, which is usually 3 to 4 books, sometimes more if the books are light, sometimes less if the books are heavy. But we do now have, about 2.5 years ago, we added an online request form to our website. And a lot of people don't know that incarcerated people don't have the internet. For people in prison or jail, the internet might as well not exist. Try to imagine life before 1995, and that's sort of the world in there. So it's not like the incarcerated person can go to our website and fill out that request. So that's when it's a friend or a loved one. The friend or the loved one can go to our website, and so we have both of those ways in which requests come to us. The online requests are actually growing, increasing as a proportion of requests. I think people don't understand just quite how dire it is. To write us a letter, you need to have paper, you need to have a stamp, which 75 cents is a lot of money when you're making 15 cents an hour. You need an envelope, which none of that stuff is free. Paper, envelopes, you need something to write with. None of that stuff comes to you free from the system. So a lot of times, even just getting together the materials to write that letter is hard. So it's easier for that person to say, hey mom, hey girlfriend, whoever, go on this website and fill out a book request for me. So those are the two ways in which book requests come to us.
Yeah, how do you get your program out to all the prisons and the prisoners so that they know about you? And
we have started sending flyers whenever we get approval to send to a new facility that we haven't sent to before. We will send a pack of flyers to them and ask them to please post them in the housing units within their facility. And it'll explain just a little bit, write us a letter with 3 to 4 categories of books that you like, that you would enjoy. And so increasingly people are telling us, oh, I saw the flyer in the day room, I saw the flyer on the tier, but still 95% is word of mouth.
Okay.
We've been around since 1972, so, and I once had an incarcerated person tell me that the only place that word of mouth information travels faster than a high school cafeteria is inside a prison.
Oh, that's cool.
So information, especially addresses of organizations that are actually helpful, that respond to requests, those are passed around, by the million. And so our address is widely known in prison. If you ask, my guess is if you did a survey of 100 incarcerated people, 50 of them would have our address.
Okay.
And so we've just been around and we've been doing this so long that people say, hey, write to Lucy Parsons Bookstore, which is sort of our nickname. And so most people, we have a little form when people write to us with a thank you note or whatever, we ask them, how did you hear about us?
Yep.
And like more than 90% of them say, I heard from my cellmate, or I heard from my buddy on the tier, or I heard from a friend at another facility. So most people hear about us from another incarcerated person who received our services.
Okay. So how widespread is this? Whole country, local, federal?
Yeah, our service area is all 50 states as well as Guam and Puerto Rico. We serve at least a few facilities in every state. There are some states like Texas, California, and Michigan right now where for a variety of reasons, we're not able to serve local jails or state prisons, but we do serve the federal prisons in those states. So we serve at least a few facilities in every state. We send an awful lot of our biggest states that we serve are actually the states with the biggest prison populations. Surprise. So Florida has a huge prison population, Pennsylvania has a huge prison population, North Carolina has a huge. So, Massachusetts, we do serve every facility in Massachusetts. But Massachusetts, people don't know this, in our prisons we have 5,500 people. It's a pretty small group.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Florida, you're talking about 45,000 people. So 9 times the size. So we do serve every facility in Massachusetts, and we do provide expedited service to not just Massachusetts, but all of New England. So their requests get processed a little bit faster. They get their books within 30 to 45 days. Across the country, we try to keep our processing time to under 90 days, 60 to 90. So from the time that your letter arrives, to the time your books go out the door, it might be, 60 to 90 days if you're outside New England, 30 to 45 if you're inside New England. But again, the books are always free to the end recipient. They always have been, they always will be.
Yep.
Very few things are free in prison. People don't understand this. The state issued, things that you get issued by the state are very, 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 very basic and very few. And books are not among them. Like I say, writing implements are very often not among them. And so to have a source of things that are free, not many people know, some incarcerated people aren't paid for their labor, aren't paid anything for their labor. That's the case in 6 states in the country. And those who are make far, far less than minimum wage, so topping out at around a quarter an hour.
Wow.
So to have a source of free things is really super important to people inside because they generally don't have loved ones with the resources to procure books for them from retailers that charge full retail price.
Yep.
You think about the average book, what is it, $15 from Amazon or from your bricks and mortar bookstore. That's just, it's just too much for most people. And we feel like everyone should be able to read. Reading is just good for people, period. Full stop.
It really is. Yeah.
That's one of our core beliefs is that if you're reading, many good things are happening to you. And many bad things are not happening to you.
It lets you escape into the book.
Lets you escape. It also lowers your heart rate.
Yep.
It also has been shown to lessen feelings of psychological distress. You can imagine, prisons are high-stress environments.
Right.
So they actually are healthy, profoundly healthy. To have a lot of people reading in a prison is very healthy. And like I say, it's also a way to connect with other people. You think of reading as this thing you do sort of solitary, off on your own in a little corner. But it's actually not that way for incarcerated people. They find ways to build conversations with others, build relationships with others, say, hey, I read about this, and talk about it. And so it's actually sort of a social, it's a bridge builder. Books are a bridge builder. And so I think any professional, corrections professional would tell you that a facility with lots of books in it is a safer facility, it's a calmer facility. If there's more people reading, there's fewer bad things that aren't happening, fights and so on, because it's such a healthy outlet. It's one of the best things you can do during a term of incarceration is read.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any restrictions on the types of books that you can send?
Oh my gosh, there are.
Or are there too many?
There are too many. We have a huge database, and we have over 1,000 facilities that we send to. Like I say, there's a few facilities who just, for some reason or another, they don't consider us to be an approved book vendor, so they just won't take books from us. But for those that will, we have a complete list of what all their rules are in our database. And there are upwards of 1,000 individual discrete rules in place at all these different facilities. One facility in Florida State Prison, has 18 distinct restrictions. So the most common one is no hardback books, no hardcover books. So when we get hardcover books donated, we are, especially if it's hardcover fiction, we're more likely to resell that and get some store credit, because paperbacks is where it's at for fiction.
Good to know.
Paperbacks is what we really need. We get more requests for nonfiction, more demand for nonfiction. So if we get hardback nonfiction, we're probably going to keep it, especially if it's in good shape. But we have to find the right prison to get it into. Only about 15% of prisons will take a hardback book, and they tend to be the minimum securities, the women's facilities, very low security facilities. So that's the most common one. The other one is no used books, which is really hard for us because most of our books are donated and used. The theory is, well, a used book could conceal contraband or something like that. But the truth is, when a facility goes to new only, books in brand new condition, it's very difficult for us to serve that whole jurisdiction with new books only. We're currently doing it. We're able to do it in Wisconsin and Connecticut, which require all books to be in brand new condition. But it's a hardship, really. We do have wish lists at Amazon and at 7 local bricks and mortar bookstores throughout Greater Boston, and that's our main source of new books. So that's a very common restriction, is no used books. Another one is there's certain kinds of books they don't want people to have. So the state of Florida does not like people to have books about how to draw. Taking up drawing is a very popular hobby in prison, and the theory there is learning how to draw could be useful in tattooing people in prison. So they don't like drawing books in the state of Florida. Other places, we do carry like a blank composition notebook, just a lined notebook that we provide to people if they want one. But a lot of places say no composition books because they sell that sort of thing through the commissary, and they don't want people getting it for free through a program like ours. Sometimes they'll say no comics. We carry puzzle books, which are obviously great, crosswords, word search, Sudoku, those kinds of things. Great for passing the time. But again, a lot of places say no puzzle books because, again, they sell that sort of thing through their commissary program. And they receive a sort of a portion of the sales through the commissary as a commission. So there's an interest there in making sure they're not getting them for free from programs like ours. And then there's certain kinds of, restrictions. Some places, almost every place, if you were to try to send a book on, for example, welding, it just wouldn't go. It wouldn't go through. So you have to be practical, right? Because welding is about metal and fashioning metal objects. Prisons do not like metal of any kind. Anything that could, conceivably be used to harm others. Anything about chemicals or, fashioning weapons, that sort of thing, is a major no-go. We also don't carry true crime. There's no facility that I know of that would accept true crime. So we get a lot of donations of books about Whitey Bulger and all this stuff. It's great.
Especially
people
from
love their
here,
Whitey Bulger books, but we don't carry true crime, and there's no prison that I know of that would accept true crime. So those are some of the really common ones. There are other really niche ones. It really depends on the facility. Sometimes, for example, there's a very popular genre of comic book. The Japanese comics, they're called manga. They're black and white comic books, and a lot of places don't like any mangas coming into their facility. And we're not exactly sure, but we think the reason is that the characters tend to be drawn with large eyes, and so they resemble children. And they're, so there's a whole host of restrictions. When we count up all the, like I say, there's almost 1,000 different rules. Some facilities have no restrictions on books, and we love that, and we're big fans of that, and we encourage that. They tend to, as I say, be pre-release facilities, women's facilities, smaller level compounds, not the big, state penitentiaries and stuff like that, which tend to have lots of rules.
Because why I'm asking this, because your website is fantastic. I've spent a lot of time on it.
Thank you. Music to my ears.
The idea about the donations, and I noticed the wish list, and so if people want to donate a book through these wish lists, all the links are there, and all the
right across the
information
top
how
of
to
our
do
homepage. And we make those lists with an eye toward what we know people are asking for. A good example is the old-fashioned almanac. Now I remember, my grandmother always had on her shelf the year's almanac. And it is so popular in prison, but nobody buys them anymore. So they're not going to come in via donation. So we have the almanac, the 2025 Almanac and World Book of Facts, on almost all of our wish lists. And we could never have enough almanacs in stock, because the reason is, think about if you had no Google in your life. Imagine you didn't have Google. Then what's the next best thing? An almanac, which has, pound for pound, the most information, facts, that sort of thing. And so we put things like almanacs on those lists specifically because they would never come in any other way. So anyone who wants to donate a book and be sure that it goes on our shelves and not, to another organization or something, should get one from the wish list, one of those wish lists, any of those wish lists. And if you go to our Amazon wish list, you'll see what we call special requests. So, like I say, we try to fulfill most requests for categories or topics of books. So someone says, I want to learn about the westward expansion of the railroads. We can probably fill that. But if somebody says, I really need a Tamil English dictionary. Tamil
Yep.
is a minority language spoken in India. We may not have that. But if someone has a study interest or just something they want to learn about that seems worthwhile to us, what we'll do is we'll post that item. If we don't have it on our shelves, we'll post that item to our Amazon wish list.
Yep.
And there'll be a little note there that says for Julio in Texas.
Yeah.
And so if you want to buy a book specifically for a person that they specifically need for their learning, for their growth, you can find it there. And so that's sometimes kind of fun and special to do because you realize, oh, this person's going to get this exact book.
Exactly, yeah.
It'll come through our program. It won't go, because we're the approved sender. So it'll come to us, then it'll go to the specific person that it's meant for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, if people are donating, do they donate in languages other than English?
They do. They do.
And you do take them? Yeah.
Yes, we will. We have sections. We have at least books in at least 30 other languages besides English. Obviously, the most requested is Spanish. After that, Chinese and Russian are also very popular. We have a lot of people who that's their language. That's what they read. So we love to get books, especially in like I say, in Spanish, Chinese, and to a certain extent Russian. But then people who are learning that language, once they get good enough, because taking up language study is also really popular in prison. It's a great way to spend a lot of time. So if they've gone through a textbook or two and they've gotten a little bit more intermediate level, they'll ask for a book in that language so that they can try reading it in that language and test their skills. So we have a lot of people who take up Japanese. For some reason, it's very popular right now to take up Japanese. So then they'll get good enough at recognizing the kanji and the characters that they'll say, send me a book in Japanese. So we collect books in other languages too, so we would definitely love that.
Yeah, if people want to volunteer, how do they volunteer for your program?
So it is the easiest thing in the world. We are literally the easiest place in Greater Boston to volunteer. We don't want any paperwork. All we want is your email address. You just sign up on our website. That's all. There's no query. There's no background check. There's no prior training. You don't have to show up early. You don't have to do anything. You literally just show up. The other place you can sign up is through an organization called Boston Cares, which is a one-stop shop for volunteer opportunities throughout Greater Boston. They work with like 60 to 70 nonprofits to advertise their volunteer opportunities. We're just one of the 60 to 70, but we set aside a few spots for each session for Boston Cares. But most of the spots you can get just by going to our website, go to volunteer sign up, and you just turn up. Like I say, we've got 200 sessions a year. We'll put you right to work. We can train anyone on any task that we have at Prison Book Program in 8 minutes or less.
Well, that's good.
So we like to put people right to work. At each session, we do take a break in the middle, just sort of talk about ourselves, get to know people a little bit more. But when people first arrive, expect to be put right to work.
Good.
Yeah.
Get them going.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
The Insider's Guide to Jailhouse Law.
Yeah.
That was a pretty impressive presentation I saw you do currently in Quincy with Joe Catalano. You want to tell us a little bit about that and how it came about and who uses it?
Yes. So Prison Book Program had been publishing since 2004. We had been publishing an item, self-publishing, we held the copyright and everything, an item called We the People, a Legal Primer. And it was written for us by a formerly incarcerated person who had been a fairly successful jailhouse lawyer. So not an official attorney, but a person who helped people with their legal work inside. This particular person had a lot of success as a jailhouse lawyer. And once released, wrote this, basically everything you need to know about the law as an incarcerated person. So we published that from 2004 to 2024. And we sent hundreds of thousands of copies of it in that time, over those 20 years. But it had grown out of date. A lot has changed in the law over the last 20 years, particularly the criminal law, and particularly for people who were convicted as juveniles. people who were convicted as juveniles are what we call near juveniles, so young adults.
Yep.
Here in Massachusetts, people may recognize the so-called Mattis cases. Those are basically the Supreme Court ruled in 2008 that sentencing anyone who was a juvenile when they committed their crime to life without the meaningful opportunity for release was unconstitutional, that it was cruel and unusual punishment, given what we know about the juvenile brain and how it's still developing.
Right.
And so on. So each state had to kind of do with that ruling from the Supreme Court what they wished, but they had to comply. So the ruling case in Massachusetts is the Mattis case. And we actually raised the age from 18, I want to say it's 21. So anyone who was 21 or under when they were convicted and was sentenced to life without parole is entitled to a second look, is entitled to get back in court, basically, because of this Supreme Court ruling. And so that's big news for a lot of people. There's a lot of Mattis defendants in the Massachusetts system. And so we knew we had to update that legal primer. We knew we had to update it because so much had changed. And we knew we could do more to make it accessible and usable. The target audience is incarcerated people who are representing themselves. I mean, the legal profession has almost nothing for you once you're convicted.
Okay.
Once you're convicted, the legal profession is pretty much finished with you. And any legal proceedings, you're going to be pro se, representing yourself. And so the Insider's Guide to Jailhouse Law is meant to be that indispensable legal reference for anyone who's doing legal work in their own case, and or looking to file grievances at the institutional level or lawsuits at the federal level regarding conditions of confinement. So there's certain rights that even incarcerated people have. Not many, but there are some. So, for example, being denied a religious diet that you need to practice your faith. Those are the kinds of things that are covered in the Insider's Guide to Jailhouse Law, just to make sure that your conditions of confinement are following the law and not violating the rights that you do have. But the vast majority of the Insider's Guide is really about doing work in your own case. Is there a way to get you back in court? What are the grounds to get back in court? The process for direct appeal, process for federal habeas, all those kinds of avenues. And so we worked on it for 2 years. I say we, I just watched. Two members of our board worked with a legal clinic through the Seton Hall Law School, and the students there and the professor there. And a ton of research and work went into it, but it was published last November. And it's 92 pages long, and we've already sent about 750 copies of it out. We anticipate that once word spreads that it's out there and it's available for free, demand will skyrocket. Oh, hey, there's a new free legal resource from Prison Book Program. Right. So we anticipate sending tens of thousands of copies of that. And we also want to proactively deliver it to law libraries inside facilities. Most state prisons and federal prisons have to have a law library by law. So we'd like to make some direct shipments of that item. We're also very soon going to see a Spanish translation of the Insider's Guide to Jailhouse Law. It's almost there. So we're very excited about that because that would make it basically the only resource of its kind in the entire country that is free to the recipient, that is in Spanish, and that helps people understand both their court paperwork and how to get back into court if they can. So we're very proud, and we make the Insider's Guide available to similar groups like us across the country. We're not the only group that does this. We are the largest, but there's about 3 dozen other groups throughout the country that rustle up books and send free books to people in prison. Most do so on a smaller scale. Maybe they serve their state. But we do make the PDF of the Insider's Guide available to them to print and distribute to their audiences as well. So besides the copies that we distribute, many more copies are going out through these other groups. And so we're thrilled that it's available. We can't wait to see the Spanish translation. And we're already getting very positive feedback about it from people who've received a copy.
Now this is available through your website.
You can download it.
And download it, right?
Any loved one or anyone who cares about an incarcerated person can go download it as a PDF, print it right out on your home printer,
Yep.
and get it that way too.
Yeah, we have been putting up the contact information for
Great.
Kelly and her group, the website, phone
Great.
number, the info at
That's
Prison
our
Book Program.
general
All right.
email. You can
Yep.
email there.
So
Yep.
that's being displayed
Great.
as we talk, so that's
Great, thank
getting
you.
all that out there.
Yeah.
The other one that you have mentioned there is the Jailhouse Lawyer's Handbook. That one's apparently been around for a while.
That's been
Longer?
around for a while. It's published by a place called the Center for Constitutional Rights. And the Jailhouse Lawyer's Handbook is available. You can write directly to the Center for Constitutional Rights and get a free copy if you're incarcerated. But again, the Center for Constitutional Rights also usually makes sure that we have copies on hand.
Okay.
So they send us several hundred copies at a time. That particular item is most useful for institutional level grievances. So if you're suffering abuse or assault by fellow inmates or by staff, if you are being denied, like say, certain religious items, if you are being placed in a particular housing unit or being denied certain kinds of medical care, health care, those are the issues that are really focused on in the Jailhouse Lawyer's Handbook. We don't write that, we don't publish that, but we gladly distribute it to anyone who needs it or wants it, along with the actual author and publisher of it, which is the Center for Constitutional Rights.
Yep. Together,
The Insider's Guide to Jailhouse Law and the Jailhouse Lawyer's Handbook make a very nice law library that you can have. If you have those two items, you can do an awful lot from your cell. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other things I found interesting on your website was, I think it was on the resources where you had the requests for books from the inmates, their thank you notes,
Yeah.
drawings.
Yeah.
There's a lot there to be looked at.
Yeah. Like I say, one of my favorite things about our program is the humanizing factor, right? These aren't just crimes or headlines, these are just human beings. They're complicated, they're interesting. And so one of the things we like to do with our website is just share sort of the artifacts that come through our space, flow through our space, in very high volume. People send us the most moving, heart-wrenching thank you notes you've ever read in your life. We have a ton of those on the website. It really tells you how much a simple book means to somebody who's incarcerated. So we have tons of thank you notes on there. People send us their original artwork. Like I say, taking up drawing is a very popular hobby in prison, and people want to give as well as receive. It's natural, right? You want to give back. And so people send us their artwork as a way of saying thank you for the shipment of books that you sent me. Some of it is masterful. It's what I consider to be fine art. We actually have a curated art exhibit that travels to communities throughout Greater Boston.
Okay.
It's called Art from Inside. Those are pieces that are gallery framed. There's about 36 of them now, about 36 pieces and 4 small sculptures. And right now it's on display in the Sudbury Public Library. It's been on display in about 18 communities around Greater Boston. So we do love to show off the artwork that's made by people inside, because again, it has that humanizing factor to it. And we have an awful lot of writing by people who are incarcerated on our website. That same section that you're talking about. They write prose, they write poetry, they write songs, they write all kinds of things. And so we like to feature a lot of that on our website too, just to show how much creativity resides inside and how much people are working on themselves and are working to use language to better themselves and also to express themselves. So we have a whole host of it's kind of like a museum. If you go to that section of our website, it's kind of like a little museum of all artifacts that you would see if you're trying to learn what incarcerated people's lives are like.
Yeah, one that really struck me there was a drawing, and it had a balloon with PBP on it, a key hanging from the balloon, and the person holding the key, and there's a drawing of the earth next to it, and it says, key to the world.
Yep.
I thought that one was great. I really like that one.
That's so emblematic of what people tell us about books. And that's really the theme of the art show, Art from Inside, is books equals freedom. Books equals free. Books open the world, right? And for someone who's been deprived of most of your freedom, a lot of people tell us, like, a book is actually physically very much like a door.
Okay.
It operates the same way,
Yep.
right?
Right.
You open it up on a plane. And so people tell us that the books that we send are doorways through which they can see the world, they can travel, they can escape, they can become new people.
Good.
Through
Yep.
the doorway of that book, I become a new person. I'm able to free myself of a lot of things that I need to free myself from. And so there really is. You and I here in the free world, we sometimes take books for granted. It's just a book. It's a
Right.
pile of paper with some ink on it. And you and I have hundreds of them on our shelves at home. And in this library, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books. It's paper. But to incarcerated people, it isn't. It's worth its weight in gold, really. It's a ticket. Some of the metaphors that people use, it's a ticket, it's a doorway, it's freedom, it's a passport. People talk about it as a window. That books really mean so much profoundly more, I think, to incarcerated people than what we sometimes feel on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, I really enjoyed your website. There's
Thank you.
a lot of
Thank
information
you.
there.
Yeah.
Well,
Visit.
Kelly, that's about all that I have for questions. Anything else you'd like to add that I didn't ask you, or?
Just that we love being in Quincy Center. We've been in the basement of the Church of the Presidents across the way for 21 years now, and like I say, we're over 50 years old. But the folks over there at the church have given us such a great home base, such a stable base where we've been able to grow. We've grown by leaps and bounds over the last 5 years, and it's really because of the support and the partnership that we have from the folks over there. And so we just want to let members of the greater Quincy community know how grateful we are for the home that we've had here. We love being on the Red Line. It's also great, accessible for volunteers.
Right near the Quincy stop.
Right near the Quincy Center stop. So it's been a wonderful home to us, and our volunteers love to patronize local businesses and get their coffees and get their lunches and stuff. So we hope that we're able to support some of the local Quincy businesses and organizations as well by bringing so many people to this community.
Yep, and those who don't know, it's at 1306 Hancock Street.
Yep.
Suite 100. It says, I understand you take up just about the entire basement
Just
of the
about the
church.
entire basement. Well, about half the basement, yeah.
Okay.
If you just look up, Standing Quincy Center, there's a shiny gold dome. That's the building.
Okay.
And our entrance is not the main entrance to the office, not the main entrance to the sanctuary, but it's an entrance right across the street from the Quincy Market Convenience Store. And when we're there, we have a banner out that says Prison Book Program.
Okay.
And people should feel free to stop by anytime they see that banner out if they just want to see the place. They don't even have to be signed up to volunteer. They can just come on and we'll give them a tour, show them how the process works.
Yep. So you volunteer through the websites. They're in the evenings about 4 days a week. And
Yeah, 2 afternoons as well.
2
Wednesday and
afternoons?
Saturday afternoons,
Okay.
and Tuesdays and Thursdays in the evenings.
Okay, so
Yeah.
hope you can get a lot of help that way.
Yeah.
So I want to thank my guest, Kelly Brotzman, for coming and talking to us. She's the executive director of the Prison Book Program. We were hoping to get a volunteer, but couldn't fit it
Next
into
time.
anybody's schedule. So I want to thank everybody for watching this episode, and I hope that you stay interested and keep reading. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you very much.